Okay. Right. Just as usual, SmartSheffield news. I'm really only going to talk about the Sheffield Digital Coalition and the digital conference that was 2 weeks ago. So the Digital Coalition, how many of you were here when Mark Gannon back in the summer talked about the Digital Coalition? Quite a few of you. So yeah, this idea of getting all the tribes, if you like, of people involved in digital development of the city into a coalition around the 7 major domains. So we had the first digital conference about this, and there was about 150 of us packed into the Electric Works 2 weeks ago. And that digital coalition is now being branded dotSHF, so dotSHF. dotSHF is going to be the new name and the new brand for this coalition of people involved in digital development of the city. Here's some photos, kind of very bad pixelated photos of the conference. This is us sitting around tables discussing things. So one of the things that we said as part of the coalition was that there's this domain model. There's these 7 domains and subdomains within them. And those domains are people, the economy, living, governance, mobility, resources, and infrastructure. And within each of those, there are lots of subdomains and companies and the public sector and academics and people, developing the digital capabilities of the city. And that if we could see what everyone was doing in all of those different areas, or at least not completely, but at least partially, we would have a better opportunity to connect things together, and people who are working on projects or working for organisations would have a better idea of what aspect their project touched on, and therefore who they should be engaging with, who they should be talking to, what other things they could leverage to pursue what they're pursuing, but also what partners they can bring in, how they can get a better, more complete, more holistic view of the world to create more comprehensive solutions to things, more applications that account for more things. And so at the conference we had a keynote speech, a couple of keynote speeches, and then we had lightning talks from people in each of those major domains, just giving a very quick overview of what's currently going on in each of those areas. And then after the break for 2 hours, there were 7 breakout areas, 1 for each of those domains, and there were sessions where people could talk about aspects of what was going on in those domains and try and pull that information together. And the idea is, as well as a brand, and there will be a website, and this is kind of being funded by the council and progressed by the council. We at Sheffield Digital are partnering and helping to promote this and to shape it and communicate it. There'll be a website, and then we've created a series of 7 Trello boards that look like this. This is the one for economy, and each of these boards has cards on them that represent either ideas or projects that are going on in the city. So the first column is information about the board and how to use it. The second one is key challenges. So these are the things that people who are really embedded in those domains regard as being key challenges in those domains. There are new suggestions. So these are some of these ideas, and these are open boards, so people can suggest concepts, projects, ideas, potential solutions, and see what kind of support they get. Some of these, like these first 2, 3 up here, actually came out of the conference. So Conference Challenge 1, how do we create sustainable incubators and accelerators in Sheffield? So there are cards that people can get involved in. If you see something you want to pursue, or you're particularly interested in, you can associate yourself with a card and then get notified whenever anybody makes a change to the card, adds some information or you can have a conversation about it, or adds a file or whatever. And what we hope is that this community and others in the city will congregate around one or more of these boards and one or more of these cards and try and progress these. And they can go from suggestions to being evaluated, to being in progress, to being completed or rejected or currently blocked. And we can see where these things are. We can kind of, people can go in and find out what the status is of these ideas and see if they need to be moved. And then further towards the, off screen on the right, there are columns for background information. So information about things that are happening in other cities that are relevant, information about reports and background data and evidence that relate to Sheffield itself, and lists of organisations and people who are active in these areas. So as a community, can we use this resource as the way of keeping ourselves coordinated? There's too much information, too much going on, too many opportunities. The challenges are too complex to do these in small conversations and email trails. But can we create a publicly accessible resource where this stuff is being listed and being talked about, being referenced, and therefore, because it's open and available, people can see what's going on and can see what the current status is, or can see a card that they're interested in and just ask a question. What's the latest on this? Is this being progressed? What happened to this funding bid? Was it successful or was it not? Who worked on it? Is there another one coming up that's similar? Could we get together again and try again? So Mark was going to be here to talk about this, Mark Gannon, but he's just came back from holiday last night and he's jet lagged. He's not back at work until Wednesday, I think. So he asked me to kind of talk about where we want this to go. So hopefully early next year. One of the things that we did at the conference was we got people to vote and give their opinions on the dotSHF brand. I hope early in the new year the brand should be finalised. There will be a website. The website will link to these Trello boards, and it will stand as an open and ongoing maintained resource for the community of people involved in digital development, to keep us up to date on what's going on and where we can pitch in. We can't do everything all at once, but each of us has particular resources and interests, and this is the way of kind of communicating what those are and progressing the things that result from it. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. That's what the conference was about. We're going to do, that conference is going to be the annual event that brings the whole community together. We wanted to establish the behaviours of using and updating and maintaining the Trello boards at the event and kind of inform people about them. There will be a website that links to them. There is a page on the Sheffield Digital website that links to them currently. I will disseminate that when I write up do the write-up for tonight's event. And you can all go and register on the boards and add your own things to them and participate. So that's really all I wanted to talk about. There's other things, obviously these are other news things that are going on, which you've heard about already. We had a meeting with the Things Network. I'm not going to all of that. Siemens have opened the MindSphere lounge, and there's lots of IoT things going on in the city at the moment. IoT Tribe has just started in Barnsley last week, which is an accelerator for IoT businesses. And the public Wi-Fi concession has been signed off. Those are all things that I put in the news because they're newsworthy and they're going to, slides are going to go up later. But really, I just wanted to talk about the conference. So finally, before we all break, has anybody got any questions?
So one of the common things tonight was the involvement of the council. What is the involvement of the council with the coalition?
So the coalition is being driven by Mark Gannon, who is he's director of business transformation and information systems at the council, and is David's boss. So it's being driven at director level. Within, from Mark's department, it also has the complete support and buy-in of the elected membership as well. So Olivia Blake, who's the deputy leader, came and spoke at the conference to give her support to the digital development of the city and the community that is involved in it. And partly that's about public transformation, digital transformation of public services, but partly it's also about the council changing its focus on technology outside the council and its own IT estate. I think it's fair to say.
And they are behind the strategy, and all the columns that you have mentioned, the 7 key issues. Are they behind that? Because I think a lot of what happens is that there is a lack of strategy in the city.
Yeah.
And because of that, the things doesn't seem to move, if you know what I mean.
Yes. So so should a strategy be a document and a vision?
I don't think it has to be a
these kind of
document.
things?
It just has to be an understanding
Yeah,
of the strategy.
Well, I think the strategy is collaboration first and foremost, and the council they've never had anyone in a role that was responsible for that, and I think the big change has been that Mark has taken that role, that he's a person that gets this and is willingly is driving it, and that his remit is one of being more externally focused and a remit to develop the city, not just sort out the IT. And also I think that there's a change in that there's a lot of infrastructure available for him to connect with. So this event, the fact that Sheffield Digital exists, the fact that there are these other actors in the city, there's already a community of people, there's already a lot of goodwill if the council can get on board and help unlock things. I think in terms of strategy, it's very light touch. Mark has written an article about the digital coalition. The domain model has come out of work that I did for the council 2 years ago, with some tweaking, but it's not set in stone, and it is it's being challenged, and it will change, and that's fine. I think also the strategy is about a change of the council's role in this. And I think up until now the council has tried to reduce the number of things that are in a strategy to the number that it feels able to own, and that is not a suitable approach for a city and for a topic as big as digitisation. It needs to be facilitative. It needs to be a steward of this activity. It can't lead it. It can't lead everything. It can't drive everything. It has to pick and choose the few things that it can, but it can't just ignore everything else. In the meantime, it has to get out of the way of things, or it has to, it has to show openness and willingness to get involved in things. So I would like to see that written down and committed to. I think that's the way things are going. I don't know whether there will be a declared strategy or whether, I mean, in a sense, Mark, he wants to just keep moving. He doesn't want to force the council into agreeing on an official strategy for this stuff. He's published his aims, his objectives, and his vision for how it should work, but he's done that as a private citizen on Medium, not as an official council strategic declaration. And I like that approach. I think we can work with that approach. That approach means that we can move at the speed that we are able to.
I've just got a quick one. Obviously there's this intention of an annual conference now for the Digital Coalition.
Yeah.
Are there intended to be more regular in-person meetups?
It's a good question. I mean, one of the things that we talked about was, well, originally we kind of jokingly, because we organised the conference, ridiculously quickly, because we just said, right, this is our timetable, let's just do it. And obviously the venue was too small because the interest was massive, and we had to, there was 70 odd people on our wait list. And and so we said jokingly, oh, we're going to have to start organising the next one as soon as we finish this one. And then we said, no, we should probably start organising the next one as soon as we finish this one, and have it earlier in the year next year. So either we'll have the next one earlier, or there will be another event or other events. We also need I need to understand how Smart Sheffield relates to the Digital Coalition or dotSHF as well.
Is there funding available for sort of outreach to other industries and activities that don't consider themselves digital? I know everything has a digital element. There's so many people around the city who think, oh, it's digital, it's not me.
Yeah.
They feel like an outsider to it all.
Yeah. Is there funding available?
I just wondered if
there's no
outreach is something.
I'm going to ignore the is there funding available. I think just go with is there a desire or a plan to reach out to more. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because labelling it digital is useful and meaningless, and calling it dotSHF to have a brand kind of links it to digital technology, obviously. I think increasingly digital development strategies or efforts are just becoming future adaptation strategies and efforts. I think that they're about new methods, new technologies, no matter what they are, new ways of working, all of those things. They're not just narrowly about this particular technology. So I think we may well in a couple of years think this is hopelessly, out of date, and we exclude loads of people. I think for now it serves our purpose, but we want to be open and inviting and not exclude anyone, but of course we do exclude people by labelling it digital, and people don't think it's for them and so don't get involved. I think in the first instance we want to make sure that our community is kind of aligned and engaged and doing stuff together, and then move it to as many others as we can, because it kind of involves everyone, and everyone is kind of whether they actively want to get involved or whether they're fearful and know they should but don't know how to engage. I think we'll have to come to that in a bit. But organisations like Sheffield Heritage, for example, have already been in touch with me and said, I think what you're doing is really interesting. We don't, digital is not our thing, but it seems like there's a new governance model emerging in the city that is welcome.
So is there a question or a conversation to be had around that strategy by the digital is a means to an end, and therefore what we're talking about is changing the things that matter, and that's a lot about what we're trying to do with Mount Pleasant. But when you mention like heritage and stuff, like they say digital is not our thing, but they're trying to do something. Digital and technology is literally will constantly change, and people will become irrelevant, and people will come unless they adapt and change. The overarching principle that brings us all together is what we're trying to actually do, and I'm wondering, rather than let people fall by the wayside, could we put it into an overarching strategy, whether that's agreed to centrally in public sector terms or not, by just what we want the city to be?
Yeah. I think there's still a hard way of looking at it. There's there's kind of a hard way and a soft way. The soft way is that it's everything. The hard way is that it's about infrastructure, that it's about enabling the soft stuff. And I think we, or a lot of people here, know that the infrastructure is not fit for purpose. And we can talk and and think about all of the things, all the impact that we want to have, but the infrastructure needs to be in place. And that's not just physical technology infrastructure. It's education infrastructure. It's access infrastructure. It's governance, there's all of those things that are in the domain model is there, and the digital infrastructure needs to be there to act as a platform to allow these things to happen. So I'd be a little bit concerned that if we do say, oh, it's just about it's about the soft stuff, that we can't get a handle on it.
Sure, but my pushback to that would be when we constantly split these things into the soft stuff and the hard stuff. Like the soft stuff that you're describing is the thing that matters to people. It's the thing that kind of affects people's health and well-being and mental state of mind, all of that other stuff. If there was even a change in language about the way that stuff was described, like this is the important stuff, we need to put the infrastructure in place in order to affect things. For me, the two are the other way around. The technology and the hard stuff is the thing that facilitates the stuff that actually matters. And I think there's an interesting conversation just to have around how do we frame this stuff, because it's constantly referred to as the soft stuff, but it's not the soft stuff, it's the thing that actually matters.
Yeah, but that's a strategy. That's a strategy for the city.
Right, but if the city aren't going to do it, if we just make it, we can write it, put it out there, and they will get on board with it regardless.
Yeah.
I think there's a relationship between that point, and it would be better if it was endorsed by the council in terms of in relation to the conversation about funding, because it always supports funding bid if you can say that this project is in line with the city strategy. So there is value from that perspective. Yeah. In order with the primary objective of bringing the resources in.
There is quite a large sense in which this is softly catchy monkey.
Yeah.
You know, this is not the city strategy. We have not opened that can of worms, right? We have said, oh, we're doing a digital strategy over here. It's good, it's going to be good for everyone. Don't you worry about it, right? But we know that a digital strategy is really a future strategy. It's really, it's where a lot of it is at. There's very few things you can affect without using the technology. But technology is not a component. So.
It is interesting that the way that a number of recent policies have been sucked into City Council, things like Fairer City stuff came out of the Fairness Commission, which was commissioned by, but nothing to do in that sense with the council. And some of the green issues that are going forward are from the Green Commission, which again was commissioned by but outside of council, because they were run by what was then Sheffield First and the Executive Board, what is now Sheffield City Partnership Board. Yeah. And that external development can often be a better way of sucking policy into the City Council, because they then think that's something we want to be on board with. So that softly catchy monkey approach is not necessarily the slowest, it's sometimes the quickest. Yeah.
Yes, and there's precedent for it being sucked in and for it being co-opted back in. There's a lot of scrutiny. If you start to say, this is the city strategy, then there's a lot more involved. Whereas we are able to move at this speed and try and provide something, trying to unlock some of this stuff, some of the funding, some of the relationships, try and get an overview of all of the things that are going on and where there are gaps and where there are things missing. So if we can get to that point and start delivering value back to the council, rapidly, then that's where we want to get to. I think calling it a digital strategy serves us now. It may not serve the city ultimately.
Completely. I just think it'd be a really interesting conversation to have, because when it comes to strategy, the council, when they started the Fair City campaign, actually set out their stall and said that they wanted Sheffield to be the fairest city in the UK. That's the strategic statement.
Yeah. Yes, and so ours is it's not ours. The council wants the city to be the most connected city.
Yeah, completely.
It's got a long way to go to be the most connected city. Anyway, that's where we are. So it's all going to evolve. Is that a question?
No.
Any more questions? Right. Thank you very much for coming. What an awesome evening.